Today, I want to tell you about something that happened in Missouri. It starts off looking like a fairy tale romance, but ends up being one of the most twisted stories I have ever told. So, grab your snacks and get comfortable because this one is going to make you question everything. On a dark April evening in 2018, a man was driving down a quiet gravel road in Monroe County. He was just taking a shortcut to his mama's house. Nothing unusual about that. But on his way back, he saw something in the middle of the road that made him stop his car. A woman, lying there motionless, 35 years old. She did not make it. At first, nobody knew what had happened. Was it an accident, a hit and run? The whole community was in shock. This woman was loved. She had a little boy at home. She had dreams. She had a wedding planned for just 2 days later, 2 wedding dresses hanging in her closet because she could not pick just one. She was supposed to walk down the aisle that weekend. Instead, her family had to plan a funeral. But something about that night was not right. And when police knocked on her fiancé's door to deliver the news, the woman who answered was someone who should not have been alive. So settle in, because this story is about lies, double lives, and a man who thought murder was easier than telling the truth. Hi, sweet ones. My name is Grandma Kitty, and before we dive in, take a second to subscribe if cases like this intrigue you. It helps me keep these stories coming, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from. That's how we find our neighbors here in our little true crime corner. Now, let me tell you about the woman at the center of this whole mess. Her name was Molly Watson, born on December 15th, 1982, in a little place called Moy, Missouri. Her parents were Timothy and Sandy Watson, good people who loved their children. Molly had a brother named Tim, and from what everybody says, her childhood was a happy one, loving family, close bond with her brother, the kind of upbringing you hope every child gets. Now, here is something important about Molly. She was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, but let me tell you, that girl did not let anything hold her back, not one thing. She was open-minded and unafraid of new challenges. She knew exactly what she wanted out of life, and she stayed true to herself no matter what situation she was in. And smart? This girl was smart. She went and got herself a master's degree in psychology, a whole master's degree, worked in the education sector, helping other people. That takes dedication right there. Now, let me tell you about Molly's personality, because this is important. This girl loved her some comics and video games. She was a huge Harry Potter fan, huge Disney fan too. Remember that because it comes up later. She was into cosplay, dressing up as her favorite characters. And she was passionate about nail art. So passionate that she actually started her own nail polish line and sold it for a while. In her free time, you could find Molly curled up reading a good book with her 5 cats. Yes, 5 cats. This was a woman who knew how to enjoy the simple things. Now, on the outside, Molly seemed calm and reserved, quiet type. But do not let that fool you. She had a strong personality underneath all that. She knew her own mind. But her love life, that is where things get complicated. In her mid-20s, Molly got married for the first time. And I wish I could tell you it was happily ever after, but it was not. That marriage was unsuccessful, and after just 2 years, it ended in divorce. Now, here is the twist. While she was going through that divorce, Molly found out she was pregnant. Life was about to change dramatically for this young woman. Before her baby was even born, Molly entered a new relationship, and this time it was with a woman. Her name was Amber Brady. Now get this. Molly and Amber had actually known each other since they were children, but back then, they could not stand each other. Funny how life works, right? 2 decades later, they reconnect, and suddenly they are a perfect match. Both of them had recently ended marriages. Neither of them had ever been in a relationship with a woman before, but they found something special in each other. A few months later, Molly gave birth to her son. She named him Declan. Now, this precious baby was born with cerebral palsy, which meant there would be extra challenges ahead. But Amber stepped up. She supported Molly through everything. Together, they navigated this new and beautiful chapter of life. Things were looking good for Molly. She had a partner who loved her, a beautiful son, a new beginning. Now, Molly seemed to have finally found her happiness. Everything was falling into place. But then she met someone at work who would change absolutely everything, and not in a good way. Before I tell you who this person was, do me a favor and tap that like button real quick. And if you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button too. Trust me, you are going to want to hear what happens next. After her maternity leave, Molly went back to work. She was 28 years old at this point and got herself a job at the Moby Area Correctional Center. You know, one of them prison facilities. And that is where she met him. His name was James Addy. He was a corrections officer at the same place. Now, let me tell you about James. This man was born on July 4th, 1965. That made him 16 years older than Molly. 16 years. He had joined the Navy as a teenager and had been around the block a few times. James told Molly that he was married to a woman named Melanie, said they had 2 children together. But here's the important part. He told Molly that his divorce was pending, said he and Melanie were basically done, just waiting for the paperwork to go through. You see where this is going, right? Despite the big age difference and their very different backgrounds, Molly and James found common ground. They enjoyed talking to each other at work, spent their days chatting about this and that. And over time, their little work friendship evolved into something more. They started having secret evening meetups at motels, hiding the whole thing from their partners, sneaking around like teenagers even though James was a grown man in his 40s. Meanwhile, Amber had no idea her partner was being unfaithful, at least not at first. But gradually, Amber started noticing some things that did not sit right with her. Once, she saw Molly at a gas station with some older man. That sparked her suspicion, something fierce. So what did Amber do? She followed her intuition, tracked down the motel where her partner had gone, walked right up to that door and knocked. When Molly opened it, the look on her face must have said it all. She was caught, red-handed, in the act. There was no point in making excuses. After that confrontation, Molly broke things off with Amber, and she started officially dating James. Out in the open now. No more hiding. Molly was head over heels in love with this man. I mean, completely gone. Could not see straight. But her family and friends, they were not feeling it. Not one bit. It was no secret that Molly was the one paying for all their dates and outings. James never seemed to reach for his wallet, and a lot of people doubted this relationship would last. But the red flags did not stop there. James left a bad impression on pretty much everyone who met him. He never looked anybody in the eye when he talked to them, never showed any emotion, just blank face all the time. People said he came across as frightening. But Molly, she could not see any of that. She was completely blinded by her feelings for this man. Love will do that to you sometimes. Well, the couple proved everybody wrong. Sort of. They stayed together, year after year. 7 whole years they were together. Then in October 2017, James told Molly some big news. His divorce from Melanie was finally finalized. After all these years, he was officially a free man. They could finally make things official, or so he claimed. Molly was 34 years old at this point. She had been waiting for this moment for 7 long years, and she was not about to wait any longer for James to get down on one knee. So, you know what she did? She proposed to him. That is right. Molly proposed to James, asked him to marry her. James was 52 years old, and he said yes. Molly was over the moon. She immediately started planning her dream wedding. And I mean, she went all out. She picked out the rings herself, hired a wedding planner, got herself a makeup artist and a hairstylist. The theme colors were going to be burgundy and gold with a touch of Renaissance style. Fancy, right? But here is the part that really shows you who Molly was. She wanted the whole wedding to be inspired by Disney, specifically Beauty and the Beast. She wanted to feel like a true princess on her wedding day. The wedding was scheduled for April 29th, 2018, just a little over a year away, and everything had to be absolutely perfect. Molly even bought herself 2 wedding dresses. 2, because she could not decide on just one. She wanted options. Around this time, Molly started a YouTube channel. She decided to share her life with the world. Every day, she would post little vlogs talking about her daily routine, her wedding preparations, whatever was on her mind. Sometimes she would post videos of herself singing. And let me tell you, that girl had the sweetest, softest voice, like a Disney princess for real. She shared everything about her wedding preparations with her viewers, showed them her dresses, talked about her excitement. She was counting down the days. But here is the thing. Even with all this joy and excitement, Molly's family still had serious doubts about James. Some of them even told her straight up that they might not come to the wedding. They just could not support this match. James seemed off to everyone except Molly. She was the only one who could not see it. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love be completely blinded by love? Ignoring every red flag? Refusing to listen to the people who care about them? Tell me in the comments, because I know some of you have seen this before. Now, just when Molly thought everything was falling into place, life threw a curveball. At the end of 2017, James came to Molly with some terrible news. His ex-wife Melanie had been in a very serious car accident. She was in bad shape, had to be placed on life support. Her condition was critical. Now, James had to support his children during this incredibly difficult time, and Molly was right there by his side, helping him through it. But here is the thing. They decided not to postpone the wedding. The date was set, and they were sticking to it. As April approached, with the ceremony just a week away, more devastating news came. Melanie had passed away. At least, that is what James told everyone. So now, James had to plan funeral arrangements while Molly finalized the last details of the wedding on her own. It was a lot. But they managed to get permission to proceed with the marriage, and they decided not to postpone. The wedding was still happening. Now, here is where I need to drop a little detail that will become very important later. Melanie was not James's first wife. She was not his second wife either, not even his third. James Addy had been married 4 times before Molly came along. 4 times. When they went to the courthouse to get their marriage license, the conversation got real awkward. James was acting nervous the whole time, reluctant to answer questions, fidgeting, looking around. That should have been a red flag the size of Texas. But Molly was too in love to notice. April 27, 2018. Just 2 days before Molly's dream wedding. 2 days before she was supposed to walk down that aisle in one of her 2 beautiful dresses. 2 days before she was supposed to feel like a Disney princess. It was evening time. The sun had gone down. The roads were dark and quiet. Molly Watson would never make it to her wedding day. A man named Glenn McCarran was driving down a dark gravel road that night. He was just taking a shortcut to his mama's house. Nothing unusual about that. It was quiet out there. Just the sound of trees and a stream nearby. At one point, Glenn noticed 2 vehicles parked on the side of the road. He stopped and asked the man standing there if he needed any help. The man said no, he was fine. So Glenn kept driving, dropped his daughter off at Grandma's house, and started heading back the same way. But on the return trip, he saw something in the road, a figure lying there, right in the middle of the gravel. Glenn stopped his car, got out, walked over slowly, and when his headlights hit that person's face, his blood ran cold. It was a woman, and she was not moving. As soon as Glenn looked into her eyes, he knew there was nothing he could do to save her. He called the police immediately. When the authorities arrived, they started examining the scene. At first, they thought Molly might have died from blunt force trauma to the back of her head. But when they looked closer at her injuries, they discovered the truth. She had been shot. This was not an accident. This was not a hit and run. This was murder. They checked to see if robbery might have been the motive, but no. Molly still had all her jewelry on. Nothing had been taken from her. Whoever did this did not want her belongings. They wanted her dead. The police found a car parked not far from the scene, one of the 2 vehicles Glenn had noticed earlier. They checked the license plate. The car belonged to Molly Watson. Inside that car, they found documents, papers about an upcoming wedding, names, dates, everything. Now the police knew exactly who they needed to notify about this tragedy. But what they discovered when they went to deliver that news would shock absolutely everyone. The man they went to notify was hiding something that sounds like it came straight out of a movie. Before I tell you what happened next, tap that like button if you are still watching. I promise you are not ready for this. At 2:30 in the morning, police officers arrived at James Addy's home. They walked up to the door and knocked, but it was not James who answered. It was a woman. And not just any woman. It was Melanie, the same Melanie who had supposedly been in a terrible car accident, the same Melanie who had been on life support, the same Melanie who had passed away just a few weeks earlier. She was standing right there, very much alive, answering the door in the middle of the night. Can you imagine the look on those officers' faces? They must have thought they were seeing a ghost. James and Melanie were both taken in for questioning, and at that moment, the investigators had absolutely no idea what they had walked into. They were sitting across from a woman who theoretically should not have been able to wake up from a coma, a woman who was supposed to be dead, and she was the wife of a man who, in just 2 days, was supposed to marry another woman. This is the kind of twist that happens in movies, where you shake your head and say, that could never happen in real life. But this was real life. When they questioned Melanie, she told them that yes, she knew who Molly was, but she thought Molly was just one of her husband's co-workers, nothing more, just someone he worked with at the correctional center. When the police told her about the affair, Melanie was in complete shock. She had no idea. For all these years, she had no idea. James came home every night. He ate dinner with the family. He slept in their bed. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary to her. He did not seem unhappy, did not seem stressed, did not seem like a man who was living a whole nother life with another woman. Only now, looking back, did Melanie remember one small thing. James had been coming home about 2 hours later than his shift ended, but she never questioned it. She just got used to it, figured it was part of his routine. It never crossed her mind that he was spending those 2 hours with someone else. For 7 years, James Addy had been living a double life. 2 women, 2 relationships. One of them had no idea the other even existed. And now one of them was dead on a gravel road 2 days before, a wedding that was built on nothing but lies. Now the police were starting to put the pieces together, and none of it looked good for James. See, up until December 2017, James had been telling Molly that his divorce was just taking longer than expected. Paperwork issues, legal delays, you know how it is. Except, here is the thing, he never filed for divorce. Not once. The application was never submitted. The whole thing was made up. And then, when that lie started getting harder to maintain, James decided to take things even further. He made up the car accident, made up the life support story, made up the whole death of his wife, all of it completely fabricated. When these lies came to light, the police started looking at James real hard. Because think about it. If this man could lie to someone's face every single day for 7 years, what else was he capable of? Maybe even murder. Melanie told the police that she did not notice anything unusual about James on the day Molly was killed. He seemed normal, regular day. But she did mention that he said he was going to meet up with a friend that evening. She remembered exactly what he was wearing when he left the house that night. Blue jeans, a black jacket, and boots. James told the police he left the house around 7:30 that night. Said he came back about an hour later because his friend never showed up. Got stood up. Simple as that. But here is where things fall apart for him. His wife and his teenage daughter told a completely different story. According to those 2 women, James did not come home until around 10 at night. That is a lot later than an hour. That means for the time of Molly's murder, James had no alibi. Nobody could say where he was or what he was doing, and that is not all. His daughter Emma was still awake that night. She was up late doing her homework, and she remembered exactly what happened when her father finally walked through that door. He seemed nervous, anxious. Something was off about him. And the first thing he did, he went straight to the shower. Then he started doing laundry. Now, why would a man come home late at night and immediately start washing clothes? James was arrested and scheduled for more questioning the next day. Melanie was let go after her initial interview. She went back home to her daughter, but now she had a lot to think about. This woman had just found out that her husband of 22 years had been cheating on her for 7 of those years, that he was about to marry another woman in 2 days, that he had told this other woman she was dead. Can you even imagine trying to process all of that? Melanie went home and had to pretend everything was fine in front of her teenage daughter. The girl was getting ready for a school dance. Just normal teenager stuff. Meanwhile, her mother's whole world had just been turned upside down. But Melanie could not just sit there. She needed answers, so she started searching the house. She went up to the attic, found a locked trunk up there, and when she opened it, her heart must have dropped to the floor. Inside that trunk was a photo album, pictures of James and Molly together, evidence of their entire 7-year relationship laid out in photographs. It got worse. Melanie discovered that during those 7 years, James and Molly had taken multiple trips together. They went to Florida, they went to Mexico, real vacations. The kind of trips you take with someone you are building a life with. And suddenly, Melanie remembered all the excuses James had given her over the years. Sometimes he said he had work training out of town. Sometimes he said he was going on a trip with his buddies. All lies, every single one. And here is something that shows you just how controlling James really was. During their 22-year marriage, he did not want Melanie traveling anywhere without him. He told her he was worried she would have an opportunity to have an affair if she traveled alone. Can you believe that? This man was cheating on his wife for 7 years straight, taking vacations with his mistress, and the whole time he was worried his wife might cheat on him. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. For years, this man had been living 2 completely separate lives. He had 2 partners. He was about to have 2 wives. One of them did not even know the other existed. Now, Melanie had to figure out how to explain any of this to her daughter. She told Emma that Dad was at the police station giving testimony, did not go into details about why, but teenage girls have access to the internet, and the story was already making news. Emma found out what really happened from her friends. They had seen an article online. Can you imagine finding out your father is a murder suspect from your classmates? As more details came out in the media, Emma learned just how deep her father's lies went. She saw pictures of Molly, and that is when she realized something that made her stomach turn. She had met Molly before. See, Emma was into cosplay just like Molly was, and at some point, James had taken his daughter to Molly's house. He wanted Molly to sew a costume for Emma to wear to a convention. So this girl had stood in the home of her father's secret girlfriend, had a conversation with her, had no idea who this woman really was to her family. That is a level of twisted that is hard to wrap your head around. While James's family was discovering the depth of his betrayal, the police were busy building their case. They went back to that gravel road where Molly's body was found, and they started collecting evidence. First thing they found were tire tracks, and those tracks matched the tires on James's car. That put his vehicle at the scene of the crime. Then they searched his house, found his car parked in the garage, which was unusual because he normally parked it outside. Melanie confirmed that he was not working on the car that evening. There was no reason for it to be in there, unless he was trying to hide something, and that car was covered in mud. The same kind of mud from that gravel road where Molly died. But the most important piece of evidence was found near Molly's body, a white t-shirt, just lying there on the ground. Now, this was not just any t-shirt. It had a personalized print on it, the kind of custom design that somebody makes special. And when they traced it back, they found out that print had been made by James's own daughter, Emma. It was his shirt. There was no doubt about it. And when they tested that shirt, they found Molly's DNA on it, along with traces of gunpowder. This man left his own personalized clothing at the crime scene, right next to the body of the woman he killed. Now, the bullet itself was too destroyed to test. They could not match it to any specific weapon, but they had James's phone records, and those records showed 2 very important things. First, James had a 20-minute phone call with Molly that evening. They talked for 20 minutes before she ended up dead. Second, his phone pinged off towers in the area where her body was found. That put him at the scene. And remember Glenn, the man who discovered Molly's body? He testified that when he drove by earlier that night, he stopped to talk to a man standing by one of the parked cars. He described that man as short, white, and around 50 years old. That description matched James perfectly. So what was the motive? Why would James kill the woman he was about to marry? The police had a theory, and it made a lot of sense. See, Molly had started getting suspicious. She knew something was not adding up about James's story. His wife was supposedly dead, but something felt wrong. So Molly did what anyone would do in this day and age. She went on the internet and started searching. She looked up Melanie's obituary, could not find one. She searched for hospital records. Nothing. There was no evidence anywhere that Melanie had died. Because Melanie had not died, she was alive and well and living in the same house she had always lived in. Molly was starting to figure out that James had been lying to her about everything. And James, he panicked. He had spent 7 years building this web of lies. 2 women, 2 lives. And now it was all about to come crashing down. Molly was going to expose him. His wife would find out. His children would find out. Everyone would know what kind of man he really was. So instead of facing the truth, James decided it would be easier to make the problem go away permanently. That is what the police believed. That is what the evidence suggested. James Addy killed Molly Watson to protect his secrets. Now here is what gets me about cases like this. The audacity of these people, the absolute nerve. James really thought he was going to get away with this. He thought he could kill this woman and nobody would figure out it was him. But look at what he left behind. His daughter's personalized t-shirt right next to the body. His tire tracks at the scene. Mud from that road all over his car. Phone records putting him in the area. A 20-minute call with the victim. And in Molly's car, which was parked right near where she died, there were documents about their wedding, papers with his name all over them, proof of their 7-year relationship, evidence of his double life sitting right there for anyone to find. This man did not even try to cover his tracks. He just killed her and went home and took a shower like nothing happened. And remember that black jacket Melanie said he was wearing when he left? After that night, it was never seen again. Melanie looked for it, could not find it anywhere. James must have gotten rid of it along with whatever other evidence was on it. How did he think this was going to play out? The trial was set for April 26, 2021, almost exactly 3 years after Molly was killed. The prosecution brought in experts on tire tracks, witnesses who knew both James and Molly, people who could speak to what happened that night. Melanie took the stand. She told the jury that she had no idea about the affair. Not until the police showed up at her door that night. She said in all those years, she never suspected a thing. But then she said something that really stuck with people. She told the court that she believed her husband was capable of murder. She described James as possessive, controlling, the kind of man who wanted to keep tabs on everything. She said, in her opinion, he could absolutely resort to extreme measures to solve his problems. This is his own wife saying this about him. Then Emma took the stand, the teenage daughter who had to testify against her own father. She told the court about that night, how her father came home way later than he said he would, how he seemed anxious and nervous, how he immediately took a shower, how she heard the washing machine running when she walked through the dining room, and then she said something that made the whole courtroom pause. She smelled bleach that night, strong, the kind of smell you cannot miss. Her father was washing away evidence while his daughter was just a few feet away brushing her teeth. The lawyers questioned Melanie about everything, about her marriage, about whether she was really divorced in October 2017, like James had claimed on that marriage license. She was not divorced. She had no idea her husband of 22 years had signed a form saying otherwise. She had no idea that form was a marriage license to marry another woman. They asked her about the car accident. Was she in a horrible crash around Christmas or New Year's that year? No, she was not. Did she pass away in April 2018? Obviously not. She was sitting right there in the courtroom. Everything James had told Molly was a complete fabrication, every single word. Now, here is the part that still makes my blood boil. James did not testify during his trial. He did not get up there and defend himself or explain his actions. He did not answer any questions. But he did choose to read a statement. And what was that statement? A love letter to Molly, the woman he murdered, the woman whose life he ended just 2 days before their wedding. He stood up in that courtroom and read a love letter to her like he was some kind of victim in all this. The audacity of this man. I cannot even find the words. He also requested a new trial, said his defense attorney did not do a good job, said they did not present all the evidence that could have helped his case. Please. In July 2021, the jury came back with their verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. Armed criminal action. James Addy was sentenced to life in prison plus an additional 10 years. He maintained his innocence right up until the end, said he did not do it, announced immediately that he was going to appeal. But here is the thing. While he was serving his sentence, word got back to the authorities about something James allegedly said to another inmate. He told this other prisoner that he ended up in jail because someone ended up face down in a ditch. Face down in a ditch, that is how he described what happened to Molly. The woman he claimed to love. The woman he wrote a love letter to in court. Face down in a ditch. That tells you everything you need to know about who James Addy really is. Now I need to tell you about what happened after. Because the tragedy did not end with Molly's death. Not even close. In April 2018, the people who loved Molly had to do something no family should ever have to do. They had to bury her. At the same time that they should have been celebrating her wedding, they were planning a funeral instead. 2 dresses hung in her closet that she never got to wear. A venue that never saw a ceremony. A little boy who would grow up without his mother. But it got even worse. Molly's parents, Timothy and Sandy, were completely destroyed by what happened to their daughter. The grief was too much. The trauma too deep. Within just a few months of Molly's death, both of her parents passed away. Their health had been declining rapidly, and everyone who knew them said the same thing. It was the stress, the heartbreak, the unbearable pain of losing their child in such a violent way. Molly's mother, Sandy, was diagnosed with severe psychological trauma from the murder. Before she passed, there were times she could not even recognize her own husband of 50 years. Timothy, Molly's father, spent over 2 years taking care of his wife while also dealing with his own grief, the stress of a murdered daughter, a wife who was slipping away mentally. It was all too much. In September 2020, Timothy died of a heart attack. So this one man's actions did not just take one life. James Addy's selfishness killed 3 people. Molly, her mother, her father, and here is what makes it even more heartbreaking. Neither of Molly's parents lived to see the man who killed their daughter get convicted. They died before the trial even happened. They never got to see justice served. Molly's brother Tim gave a victim impact statement at the trial, and what he said will stay with me for a long time. He called Molly his best friend, his sister that he would never see again. He called James a monster. He talked about how this tragedy pushed his mother over the edge, how his father spent years caring for her while falling apart himself, how the stress took both of their lives. And then he said something that hit me right in the heart. He said if James had just chosen to break up with Molly instead of killing her, he would still have his sister. He would still have his mom. He would still have his dad. One man's decision to take the easy way out and commit murder instead of facing the consequences of his lies, destroyed an entire family. Tim asked the jury to give James the maximum sentence. He said James chose to take Molly's life without mercy, so the jury should not show him any mercy either. Now let me tell you about the people left behind. Molly's son Declan has been living with family members since his mother's death. Remember, this little boy was born with cerebral palsy. He already faced challenges in life, and then his mother was taken from him when he was still so young. The family made his custody and well-being a priority. From what we know, he is being raised in a loving and supportive environment, surrounded by people who will make sure he knows how much his mother loved him. But he will never get to grow up with her. He will never get to hear her sing those Disney songs in person. He will never get to see her face light up when she talked about the things she was passionate about. Because James Addy decided that murder was easier than honesty. And that brings us to the end of this story. But I want to leave you with something to think about. This case is not unique. It is not the first time someone has chosen violence to protect their lives. And sadly, it will not be the last. Molly Watson had her whole life ahead of her. She had dreams. She had a son who needed her. She had a wedding dress hanging in her closet and a future she was excited about. And all of that was taken from her by a man who could not face the consequences of his own choices. James Addy is sitting in prison right now. Life plus 10 years. He will die behind bars. But no amount of time can bring Molly back, or her mother, or her father. One person's selfishness, 3 lives lost, an entire family torn apart. So if there is any lesson here, it is this. Trust your instincts. When people around you are raising red flags about someone, listen to them. They might see something you cannot see because you are too close to the situation. And if you are ever in a relationship built on lies, know that the truth always comes out eventually. Always. Molly deserved so much better. She deserved her fairy tale ending. She deserved to walk down that aisle and feel like the Disney princess she always wanted to be. Instead, she got a funeral. And that is the tragedy of this whole story. Thank you for watching today. If this story moved you, leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you have not already, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next story. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, the people who love you only want what is best for you, even when it is hard to hear.